Hello, my lovely people. My name is Kate. As always, I'm with you on this channel. If you like what I'm talking about, subscribe so that you can get all the new information. My dog definitely likes to be in the video as well. And today I would love to talk about this topic that is kind of bothering almost everyone at some point in their life is the fear of criticism, right? The fear of rejection, fear of criticism. What is it? Why we have it, and why it kind of keeps us stuck in almost everything we do. First of all, fear of criticism comes from being criticized. Always. Sometimes in very few cases, it will come from like a sudden event, right? The person was growing up in a very supportive, very loving, very kind, emotionally present family, but at some point they get criticized, so they get shocked by the event. They haven't expected it, and it can happen in their early ages or in their adult years. So that's why they can develop this fear. But in most cases, we are afraid of criticism because we were criticized a lot in the past, right? So usually fear of criticism leads to the misinterpretation, distorted interpretation of any conversation that we are having, right? So for example, right, if you have a partner who comes home and you are on mat leave, for example, with your baby, and your partner is telling you, "Oh, what did you do today, honey?" If you have a strong fear of criticism, you can respond to it as, with the attack, defense, right? Being defensive because my dog, please disregard the noise. Nala. And you will be defensive. You will even attack, and you will be like, you will interpret this question as like, "Oh, you're thinking I didn't do enough, or I was doing nothing, or so you like we can even get into the fight or argument or conflict because of that, right? Sometimes if we hear from our manager or supervisor or our boss or even our partner who would say, "Oh, you know what, I would suggest you try this or this or this," if you have fear of criticism, it can lead to misinterpretation, and then you will become, "Oh, she thinks that I'm not, or he thinks that I'm not good enough. Oh, I think I'm in trouble. Oh, I think that, I didn't perform well. I wasn't very productive, so my ideas don't matter." Like all of these assumptions will come out of the fear of criticism, right? Another example, for example, is if a friend is telling you like, "Oh, what if we do it this way?" Right? You will interpret it as like, "Oh, you don't think my idea is good enough." Right? So, and many other situations, fear of criticism shows up in everyday life. Sometimes when, we hear from teachers, sometimes when they're telling us something about our kids or about us, if we have fear of criticism, we will have this defensive mode. We can be mad, frustrated, or even angry at that person, right? And that can show up in our communication. So communication is really difficult if you have fear of criticism, because you will kind of put the meaning into the conversation that sometimes not what it is. Not always, but in many cases, right? So what is fear of criticism? Fear of criticism is a fear of rejection. We are afraid to be criticized because we don't want to be rejected, because our mind understands that if we are criticized, it means that we don't fit in. And not fitting in is the biggest fear of all of us. It's the fear that is the need that we are born with to fit in, to survive As children, we are dependent, so we will do anything, and sometimes extreme things, in order to fit in. We will put our needs aside. We will disregard our heart's desires, We will, be people pleasers. We will, form eating habits because we will, we want to fit into some standards, right? So all of the things that your mind can come up with, it can show up in different areas of your life, your personal life, your professional life, your relationship, right? We can go to extreme levels in order to fit in. So fear of criticism, right, is this fear of not fitting in, of being rejected, right? That's very important to understand. In most cases, in 95%, 95% cases, fear of criticism comes from, my dog just really wants to be in the video. It comes from the childhood, comes from narcissist parents, if you had those. That it comes from criticizing family, right? Of people who criticize a lot, they usually criticize themselves even more, but we just don't see that, right? People who are like, it leads to our low confidence, right? And it can lead to really not being able to take action in our life. Like inaction, like if you are stuck, if you have this imposter syndrome, right? You have this procrastinations, right? A lot of time, fear of criticism, fear of judgment can play a huge role in this. So when you have a procrastination, you shouldn't be working on procrastination. You should be working on all of those underlying problems that are there, right? Very important. So what is the cause, the root of the fear of criticism? Emotionally unavailable, immature parents, right? People who were criticizing you, right? Who were judging you, who were putting so many expectations on you that you physically and mentally couldn't even keep up to them, right? It can lead to your first love, your first loving relationship that ended up Nala. It can be your first teacher who criticized you. School is a huge reason for you developing a fear of criticism, because we get criticized from like grade 1. Not good enough, right? You're not as good as Jane, or you're not as good as Michael, right? So all of those comparisons, right, lead to this fear of criticism, right? So childhood problems need to be resolved if you want to overcome your fear of criticism, right? Because your mind does not understand why it's happening, right? You understand that we are adults, right? We won't be judging each other that much. We won't be criticizing each other that much, but your mind still believes like it will, right? And one really important rule to remember, that people who criticize, those are broke people. It's not about you, it's about that person. People who are intelligent, emotionally mature, who are, very in the moment, conscious, who are like practicing consciousness, they will not criticize. Only people who are broke, who have low self-confidence, who are not, who have low self-esteem, right, they will criticize. People who have lots of limiting beliefs of their own, they will criticize. So that's a big thing to remember. Please remember that, and remember that in order to overcome any fear, you need to find that switch, that little switch, that trigger, that first belief that you formed. And when you transform that belief, that thought, that behavior, that emotion, that feeling that you formed as a child or in the early years, right? You will be able to look at things differently, to look at conversations differently. You will communicate differently, and everything will evolve around that change. So be healthy physically and mentally, and I love you all. Bye.